The Miami Dolphins have made some additions to their offensive line this week. Is the competition enough? That's our focus here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We are focused on everybody's favorite topic, the Miami Dolphins offensive line. It's back in the crosshairs today, baby. And the Dolphins are presumably not done working on this offensive line, but this Miami Dolphins team this past week, or the past few days really, has added a few key pieces that are potential contenders to be starters for the Miami Dolphins offensive line. So the question is, what were the acquisitions? What are the expectations for the two signings that Miami made at the beginning of the week? And is it enough for what we want this offensive line to be? Of course, Miami's offensive line this past season made significant growth and strides in year two of Mike McDaniel's offense, while having to deal with a constant churn of availability and only one player playing more than 800 snaps, 820 snaps on the offensive line, that being right tackle Austin Jackson. Liam Eichenberg was your second highest snap taker, and at the beginning of the season, he wasn't a starter. Lester Cotton takes over 600 snaps at the beginning of the season. He was not a starter. Robert Hunt, now gone. Connor Williams, now unsigned. Those guys were supposed to be stalwarts and staples of the unit, and they missed half the season. Teron Armstead missed 7 games. Isaiah Wynn missed 10 games, really 11. So you admire the growth that this unit had, but I think, and you saw it late in the season, and you saw it in the playoff game against Kansas City, there's a lack of sustainability with the style of play that Miami implemented to help to maximize their offensive line to the best of its ability. Their challenge this season is replacing the outgoing pieces. I think they've adequately done that at center with Aaron Brewer. The Robert Hunt departure is a different conversation. And then there's the swing tackle conversation. And there's the what can you rely on for Isaiah Wynn conversation. And all that's the kind of stuff that we're going to have here today on the show. But at the very least, what I can tell you is this. The Dolphins at the beginning of free agency, it was announced that they had agreed to terms on a 3-year, $21 million per year, or $21 million contract, 7 per year, with Aaron Brewer of the Tennessee Titans, presumably to be the center. I think that's where he's best suited to play. They came to a 1-year contract extension for Robert Jones, and Isaiah Wynn, Jack Driscoll were the additions announced at the beginning of this week. So that gives Miami, from a 2-deep perspective, if you just ask me, is this a 53 caliber player? 53-man roster caliber offensive line. Teron Armstead, yes. Isaiah Wynn, yes. Aaron Brewer, yes. Robert Jones, yes. Austin Jackson, yes. That's your projected starting 5. Jack Driscoll, yes. Liam Eichenberg, yes. Keon Smith, yes. I do think that gives you 8 roster caliber players definitively. Lester Cotton has been on this team the past 2 years. I believe Lester Cotton could probably be a better fit for different schemes than what he was in Miami. And then Miami has Ryan Hayes and Chasen Hines, a couple of young players with unproven backgrounds, for a total of 11 offensive linemen on the team. Jack Driscoll and Isaiah Wynn were kind of the catalyst of this show because those two players, respectively, they're interesting talents. because for different reasons, they have concerns. But at the same time, they are position flexible players. There is an ideal role for both of those kinds of players who can play tackle or guard on every NFL roster. And when you consider where Miami is at with Teron Armstead, when you consider the amount of players that are capable of playing guard between Wynn and Jones and Driscoll and Eichenberg, you have 4 guys capable. Is that level of competition enough? My answer is no. I think there's probably one meaningful investment left for this offensive line. Not to do the end of the show bit before the start of the show bit, but if you told me that Miami could find one definitive starter, be that in the draft, be that via trade, be that post-June 1st free agency, a starter that you felt had the floor of an adequate level starter or better for one of the 2 guard spots that are currently up for grabs amongst this midst of a bunch of talent, I think you could probably piece together a 9 or 10 person group of an offensive line that you'd feel good about the roles while also understanding there's a durability element with Teron Armstead and a durability element with Isaiah Wynn that have to be accounted for. We're going to talk a little bit more about Isaiah Wynn, expectations for him individually next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins, looking at the competition around the offensive line and if they have enough as things currently stand. My short answer is no, but we're going to get into all of it here next on this episode of Locked On Dolphins, so stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience, they're not just what brings home the winning trophy, but it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. So let's dish on Isaiah Wynn, who's a tough evaluation for me. Well, he is and he's not. So even deciding if he's a tough evaluation is a tough evaluation. Isaiah Wynn was a really good guard for the first 6 weeks of the NFL season for the Dolphins. But Isaiah Wynn now has an extension of his troubling history from a durability standpoint, not just with his time in New England, but it's now extended into his time in Miami. Isaiah Wynn has played in double-digit games once in 5 seasons in the NFL. He has played in more than 10 games, or he's played in double-digit games twice in a 5-year career, and he's played in more than 10 games once. That 2021 season, he started 15 games and played in 16. He's played in 16 games the last 2 seasons combined. And one of those 16 games was the opening possession against Philadelphia before he went down with an injury. When he was on the field, he was an impactful player. The athleticism of a tackle inside at guard, but with a player who had a more condensed frame at 6'2", 310, there was some leverage there. The athleticism allowed him to run off the ball with the urgency that the Dolphins want and covet for their offensive line. And the stark difference between what it looked like with Isaiah Wynn versus what it looked like with everybody else who stepped into that spot for the rest of the season, it was a notable downgrade for the Dolphins. So if you told me the Dolphins brought back Isaiah Wynn, I would applaud that as an asset to the offensive line. But as somebody who has missed half of the games over the last 2 seasons combined and has only ever played more than 10 games once, your ability to close the book on a role on the offensive line and say Isaiah Wynn's got it covered, I think is short-sighted, and I think it is a detriment to your viability from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, which is why my expectations, my hope for Isaiah Wynn, I should say, is that Isaiah Wynn can be one of your utility offensive linemen. If Isaiah Wynn is not occupying a starting role at the beginning of the season, it alleviates your swing tackle concern because he's played left tackle at a fairly high level during his time in New England. And they moved him to right tackle and moved him around, and that didn't have a lot of success. Miami kicked him inside, but back on the left-hand side of the line, and they had a better product. But he's one of those guys who can play guard and he can play tackle. If you told me Isaiah Wynn didn't crack the starting lineup, I would feel as though you'd have the insurance that you would need from a swing tackle perspective. The challenge is now, in order for him to not crack the starting lineup, when you consider Teron Armstead would play in front of him at left tackle, he's not a center, so Aaron Brewer's not going to be contested there. Austin Jackson's definitively the right tackle. I said in the last segment, I think you need one significant high floor and high ceiling investment left in this offensive line. That would be a fourth spot. That would mean either Liam Eichenberg or Jack Driscoll or Robert Jones would have to beat out Isaiah Wynn for one of those, that last starting spot. Or you have to find somebody else and bring somebody else in to beat him for that spot instead. What I would say in regards to the entirety of the two open spots that we perceive on the offensive line, both being at guard, I think between the names that you have, if you rolled through the entire season and you had one of them, you'd feel pretty good about it. The challenge is because of the compounding issue with the swing tackle with Teron Armstead. Do you trust Keon Smith to do it? And if not, then you'd really want Isaiah Wynn to be available instead of saying, hey, we're going to bank on half a season for Isaiah Wynn. And whenever he goes down, assuming he does go down, he goes down and we'll take the depth guys that we have, whether it's Eichenberg or whether it's Driscoll or whether it's somebody else, and we'll plug them in. That is kind of the wild card here is Keon Smith for what my expectations and hopes and aspirations are for Isaiah Wynn, which is where it gets really messy, right? Because you hear coaches talk about the aspiration to get the best combo of five guys on the field. Well, if the best combo of five guys has Isaiah Wynn, then he should start. But if he's also your swing tackle, then you really get the heebie-jeebies. if he's your starting guard, but your swing tackle, if Armstead goes down, but that player who is playing two critical spots, arguably two of your six most important spots between a starting player and your swing tackle. Swing tackle is a top six spot on your offensive line. You got to feel good about it. If that guy is filling both of those spots, when he's not playing or penciled to play every week, you have a little bit more peace of mind. But if he's penciled in to be a starter, then you're in a really high stress situation where you're just waiting for that interruption to come and for things to get off the rails. And then he's really not a starting player and he's not a swing tackle. I will give Keon Smith credit for this. He can play on both sides of the line. And the athleticism that he showcased in his 70 snaps of NFL offensive play this past season showed a player that was a good fit within the system. The pass protection is the big mystery for Keon Smith. I know Isaiah Wynn can at least do it at a fair level. And that's why in a perfect world for me, Isaiah Wynn is not a starter. And it's not because he's on IR. It's not because he's not recovered from the quad injury. It's because it gives you ideal flexibility to absorb a Teron Armstead injury and still have a high enough floor where you feel like what happened to you last year doesn't happen to you again. Which is when you get three starters out on the interior and you got all backup players, those guys lack the juice. They lack the pop. And it really hurt that group down the stretch. You could see it. You could see the struggles that they had. Which is why I think Jack Driscoll is another fascinating player to be brought into the ranks for the Dolphins. We're going to talk about him next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. So make sure that you stick with us. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament, whether you're betting on a big upset or on a one seed. It's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who is going to win the whole thing. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Jack Driscoll was the off-the-radar addition that Miami announced on Monday. And Driscoll is a former Auburn Tiger, a utility offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, who comes to Miami after coming into the league in the 4th round of the 2020 NFL Draft. Throughout his 54 games, he has started 17 in his 4 seasons in Philadelphia. And he's been a tackle, he's been a guard. His most busy season from play was in 2021. He started 9 games and played 512 snaps. The other 3 seasons that he played in the NFL, he played 300 snaps, 354 snaps. And this past season, he played 172 snaps. Here's what I will tell you about Jack Driscoll. He may have position flexibility to play at guard or tackle. He's a guard. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the Jets game. The Jets, of course, upset the Philadelphia Eagles earlier this season, or this past season, courtesy of, I think it was 4 Jalen Hurts turnovers. Hurts throws an interception when the Eagles are up late in the game. That sets up a go-ahead touchdown in the final 2 minutes for the Jets. Philly got on top 14-3 in the first 20 minutes of the game, looked to have things well in control, and things just fell apart. Well, Jack Driscoll played 61 snaps offensively in lieu of Lane Johnson at right tackle. And the Jets ate him alive. So for me, if you're looking for swing tackle confidence, I like Keon Smith more than I like Jack Driscoll at tackle. Obviously, you have the 2 starters in Teron Armstead and Austin Jackson. And then Isaiah Wynn, this is where, kind of shuffling and stacking these pieces across from each other. Isaiah Wynn's flexibility to be able to kick over and not be locked into a starting spot, and ideally not being locked into a starting spot because that would make 2 positions weaker as compared to just 1 position weaker with a backup player, is important. Driscoll's predominantly a right side of the offensive line kind of player. But you watch the pass sets that he took against the Jets, whether it was power or whether it was speed. And they gave him everything that he could possibly handle, to the point where I'd feel much better if he was in the competition amongst Isaiah Wynn and Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones and presumably Lester Cotton and Jack Driscoll. If you put those players in a battle for one spot in training camp, you say the chips are going to fall where they may. Guys, whoever's going to take the job is going to take the job. I'd sleep a lot better at night. And I don't think you would have to be desperate to find more. Now, you're never content. You're always churning the bottom of the roster. You're always searching. And the Dolphins, look, they added a player like this, but he had center guard flex last year in Dan Feeney, and they ended up trading him for a 6th-round pick before the start of the season. Does Driscoll suffer the same fate? Probably not. Does that open the door for if somebody's interested in a Liam Eichenberg, as an example? Liam Eichenberg's contract got a bump in the 4th and final year of his rookie contract because of play time that over the first 3 years. That's over a $4 million cap hit. You could save $3.36 million by moving on from Liam Eichenberg. I'm not saying you're going to move on from Liam Eichenberg either, but I'm saying if you're going to have an open competition, you're going to say whoever's going to take the job is going to take the job, and then we're going to work out the math and figure out who we need to carry. I want Jack Driscoll in that mix for that spot. And if the board falls a certain way and you land a tackle that can play guard and then you add another guard later in the draft or whatever else, or somebody signs with you as a vet, great. Then none of them have to start. But my overall point is, going back to the very first segment that we did, you're missing one guy. You need one guy who can take a starting guard spot for the Dolphins, whether it's a tackle who can play guard and then long-term play tackle, or it's a guard exclusive player. You're missing one. And if all these other guys are competing for one spot, I'm totally cool with it. I'm totally cool with it. I know everybody wants a totally overhauled offensive line and get half these guys off the roster and this, that, the other thing. And we want it to be a strength and we want it to be an asset. But if I'm realistically looking at the competition that they're having, throw them all into the pool and somebody's going to have chemistry with the guys that are next to them. Somebody's going to click and you can roll with that. And I've always said, and one of the greatest bits of feedback that I have ever gotten in working in football media and scouting, the sum of the parts is not as great as the sum of the whole on the offensive line. And it's one of the only position groups in the NFL that can say that. You can take great individual players, but if they don't play together up front, your line's still going to be bad. So which of these individual parts creates the largest sum of the whole for Miami on their offensive line? I think you achieve that by finding one additional player. So in short, the competition, while good, is not yet good enough. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Locked On Dolphins, you can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins because it is your team every day. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm out of here. Fins up.